Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. Bill, I kind of just want to keep yelling about the same thing. Is that okay if that's what this show is?
So know what the show is every week?
Doug has one thought, and he's just going to scream about it all the time. We're not going to do that. We have 10 thoughts, true or false. Various things in college football, some things that are real, some things that are kind of made up categories. Talking a little bit about like national championship odds. We're not doing hot seat coaching stuff, but Luke Fickell, it's like he got an extension and people are like, why does he get an extension? He's got like a 1-year rollover added to his contract that Wisconsin does all the time as a matter of course. But I thought it gave us a chance to talk about like who of our teams should actually be happy with their head coaches. Nobody ever does cool seats, Bill. Cool seats are not a good headline word.
Whose seat is comfortable? Yeah.
Oh,
although I will say, like a warm seat is comfortable, so it's a little.
That's
a little
true.
Hard sometimes, yeah. Like I like a warm seat.
Heated seats in your mini SUV are a plus, right? It's like is Scott Satterfield on the hot seat, or is he just comfortably driving to work in his new heated Kia? I don't know what it is. It's like, that would actually be a funny thing, the hot seat. So we're going to do like 10 things through college football. It's stuff that it's not worth a full show on these things, but we want to check in on some of this stuff. And then I might read a thing that somebody else wrote. As you know, most of the time when I get mad, I don't actually get mad at the thing. I get mad at the media reaction to the thing.
Yes.
And it's people that are fine people. I just disagree with their opinions on things. It's not personal because I know some of these people, and I think their opinions are stupid. No, that's not what I mean. And I think that their opinions are misguided at times. But it's like the opinion makers really matter, I think, to our audience. So I want to push back against it sometimes. So we might do a little bit of that. But we're going to start off. This is all true and false. Hello to everybody joining us in the live chat on YouTube. Hello to everyone listening back on podcasts later. Hello to everyone listening, watching back on YouTube stuff later. We'll get to what you're watching, what you're eating, what you're thinking at the end of the show as well. But 10 things we're going to do, and Bill and I are going to say whether the thing is true or false. This is the first one, Landis, that I teed up for you. We have 28 teams in college football and Northern college football that we claim as our teams. At least 24 of our Northern teams should be happy with their head coach. At least 24 of the 28. And I do have a list, but I would like you to react to this first, whether you find this off the top to be true or false.
So I'm false here. I went through it and I came up with like 18 hard yeses. Like I think this is true, like definitively true about 18 of our 28 Northern programs. I think it is certainly false for probably 2 of them. And then there were 8 where I was like, it's complicated. No, like I guess you weren't. So when Facebook was first rolled out, like I was a freshman in college. Like I was like the first like college class of freshmen to like get a Facebook page. And your relationship status could be like in a relationship single or like it's complicated.
Oh,
which is like weird. It's like a weird thing to broadcast to people. But
yeah,
especially like if your significant other. But I think there's a few that are complicated, but with a lean toward yes, but enough that I wasn't like 100% absolutely every one of this fan base is happy with their head coach.
Okay. This is our version of cool seat talk. I also did mine. I had 20 hard yeses and 4 that I were like, yeah, which got me to the 24 that I stated here. So I think I'm a true on this. Do you want to run through yours and I'll say where I agree or disagree, or I could run through mine and you can say?
I'll run through my 18 hard yeses.
Okay.
I think if I
happy with your coach, you should be. Again, we want fans. We want to help fans enjoy their program. So we're not blowing smoke, but we're just trying to contextualize and tell you, I know you might be frustrated at times with the person in charge of your college football team, but we'll shoot you straight when it's like, you could do better. It might be time for a change. We just don't want you to be on that razor's edge all the time unnecessarily. So this is the group I think you can. It's a nice, cool seat. All right, who you got?
So I just did it by conference. So Boston College with Bill O'Brien.
Agree.
Syracuse with Fran Brown.
Agree.
In the Big 12, Iowa State, Matt Campbell.
Agree.
Kalani Sitake at BYU.
Agree.
Deion Sanders at Colorado.
Agree.
both Chris Kleiman and Lance Leipold at Kansas State and Kansas, respectively.
What a cool state. Just hanging out, feeling cool.
A couple of good ball coaches there. I actually have Kyle Whittingham at Utah as a yes, even though last year was kind of weird.
Agree.
Okay. Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman.
Agree.
And then in the Big Ten, Dan Lanning at Oregon.
Agree.
Kurt Cignetti at Indiana.
Agree.
Ryan Day at Ohio State.
Agree.
Brett Bielema at Illinois.
Agree.
Kirk Ferentz at Iowa.
He was in my maybe category, but we can talk this out.
All right. Sharon Moore at Michigan.
Agree.
PJ Fleck at Minnesota.
Agree.
Greg Schiano at Rutgers.
Agree.
And the last hard yes I had was Jed Fish at Washington.
Okay. I had him in the maybe category as well. Okay. So can I throw you my hard yeses and see if we get there or not together?
Sure.
Matt Rule at Nebraska. Do you really think there are people who are like having major questions about that right now?
No, not major questions. That's one of my complicated with a strong lean, I think, toward yes. So I could get there pretty easily.
Okay. Jonathan Smith at Michigan State. Was there anything in year one that lessened the enthusiasm around the hire of a guy who had been pretty darn successful at Oregon State?
I would say maybe not so much in year one, but maybe this offseason might have left people wanting. Like, I don't know, like how many like big portal splashes did Michigan State make? I think people might have been hoping for some of that. So that's why I also had him in a complicated category.
Okay. But you can imagine getting there, right? You can imagine getting there.
Yes, for sure. Yep.
And then the other two I had are like hires that I think fans should. Barry Odom at Purdue, I think fans should think that's a good hire. So I understand that he hasn't coached a game and they're completely reshaping the roster. But if you said to a Purdue football fan, are you happy with your head coach? I think yes is the right answer. I got to see, but so far so good. I think it was a smart hire.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Yeah.
And the same with Rich Rod at West Virginia. I know it may not be. I think that maybe split that fan base a little bit, but
yeah, I can't. Rich Rod, I can't figure out like. It felt to me like a lot of the enthusiasm for Rich Rod was like booster driven and not so much fan driven, and I think fans will get on board, especially with the nostalgia piece of it. But I sense the fan base is a little. Let's wait and see what this looks like, because a retread is not an automatic success always.
Okay. So who are your maybes then? So you had 18 hard yeses. I had 20. I had 4 maybes. How many like complicateds did you have?
I had 8 total.
8. Okay.
But some of them are obvious. Like one of them's Penn State. And like Penn State should be a yes, but I understand that like James Franklin is not beloved by the entire fan base.
Right. But I mean, we again, speaking of things that we could have a conversation about every single day and say the same thing. It's like everybody, whether you are a Kansas State fan or a Washington fan or a Minnesota fan or a Maryland fan or an Ohio State fan or a Penn State fan, you understand the James Franklin conversation. I don't think anyone needs it explained to them. It's just how you choose to view it. And I would encourage people to view a coach who made the college football playoff semifinal and lived up to the idea of the 12-team playoff was made for Penn State. I would choose to view that person who wins 10 games a lot pretty favorably and not talk yourself into the idea that somebody would be much like there's an easy answer that would be much, 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 much better than James Franklin. But I also made him a maybe because I understand the conversation.
Right. But it's a maybe, but that's a maybe with a lean toward yes. And I also had Pat Narduzzi as a maybe with a lean toward yes, because like the last 2 years ago was bad. This past season was better. And the track record prior to the losing season 2 years ago was very good. So like, I think that should be a yes, but I get a little bit of uncertainty there too.
I made him a maybe for you because my inclination along the way has been a stronger yes on Nardog than yours. But I acknowledge when you lose your last 6 games that people aren't going to be like, oh, that's our guy. I love that guy, Nardog. 6-game losing streak, Nardog. Like I understand that's not where we are. Right. But I also don't know that like Pitt fans should be marching through the streets with torches saying like, we got to get rid of this guy. Because it's like, for real. You're going to do a lot better. But let's see how it goes this year with year 2 of Cade Bell, with year 2 of Eli Holston. Okay. So we'll take that as a maybe. I was maybe on Fish and Ferentz.
Okay.
But it's a strong maybe on Ferentz just because, like, nobody doesn't understand the Kirk Ferentz situation. But like he rectified the deal, and then they win at a high level, and I think they might be set up to win at a pretty high level again this year. So I'll take the yes. I'm not disputing a yes. I was just maybe held back by some past misgivings by people, including mostly me.
Yeah, but I think like going out and hiring Tim Lester as the OC last year, and then going out and getting Mark Gronowski as the quarterback this year is a sign of Kirk Ferentz being a little more open to change than I would have assumed 2 years ago. So I put that as a plus for him. So that's why I had him as a firm yes.
Okay. And then Jed Fish, I maybe Fish a little bit for you because I thought year one was weird, but also could be explained. You know, like they lost everybody. They were good at home. They were bad on the road. They changed conferences. They had to fly across the country. They went for 2 in the bowl game and didn't get it. Like he lost both his coordinators, but I thought has made good hires to fill them in. They have Denzel Boston and Jonah Coleman back, and we like Damon Williams. I think the offensive line can be better. I do think there's a lot to like. So if you're good on Jed Fish, I'm good on Jed Fish. I'll move him off my maybe pile.
Yeah, I'm good. I thought it was a fine first year. I guess it could have been a little better. We talked about like some of the areas in the margins where they probably lost some games they should have won, but that's also understandable for me when the roster turns over as much as that one did. And frankly, if they had a kicker who was a little better, they probably win 2 more games. So like, I think he did a good job, and I think they're positioned well moving into the season.
Okay, so there are 4 coaches that we haven't mentioned yet. 2 of them are in the complicated pile for you. Who are those 2?
Mike Locksley at Maryland and David Braun at Northwestern. Okay. And I guess you could put Satterfield and Cincinnati in that same category too.
So I do think they're different. Satterfield has never had the highs at Cincinnati that Braun and Locksley more consistently have had at their schools.
Yes.
That Satterfield, if you like Satterfield, it's more based on what he did previous to Cincinnati. And again, I think we know people who are very unsure on the fit there. And is this the place for him? Like, is he happy there? Is the school happy with him? Could Cincinnati do better? I thought they probably should have made a bowl game last year and didn't, but they were competitive. They aren't a train wreck. But I think Locksley and Braun are a step ahead with what Braun did in year one, and that Locksley, I think, has elevated Maryland for the most part and just had like a reasonable step back year in 2024.
I would agree with that about Mike Locksley if, again, it wasn't for the athletic director going out there. Using Mike Locksley as red meat for the fan base every week. So I don't know, because I think what you said is a reasonable view on the Mike Locksley tenure at Maryland, but I don't know that the people in charge of hiring and firing feel exactly the same way.
So if we want to go by the conventional structure of conversations like this, if we would have said, how many Northern coaches are on the hot seat in 2025? My 4 that were not a yes or a maybe, I think might be my 4. So if we want to spin it that direction. So I spun it in a positive way. At least 24 should be happy rather than saying 4 are on the hot seat. But it's the same thing. So I would say I think the 4 that are conceivably on the hot seat this season are David Braun at Northwestern, Mike Locksley at Maryland, Scott Satterfield at Cincinnati, and Luke Fickell at Wisconsin.
Yes. And Luke, I think, is alone in the temperature of that particular seat. And I think David Braun might be maybe on the other end of that spectrum where it's like, is Northwestern really going to fire a coach in his 3rd year? Like, are they that kind of program? I don't second year really as the full-time head coach. He wasn't
ever the plan. I think it's different when you were sort of forced, like, that guy, no choice. They had no choice. And then it was like, whoa, 8 wins and they beat Utah in a bowl game. Okay, he's the guy. And then it might be like, oh, no, it's not. So I do think that's a little different.
Does the stadium factor into that too? Like, let's go into our new stadium with some juice and a new head coach?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I think
so. Right. And like resume, David Braun had never been a head coach. He was a defensive coordinator hire from FCS. Good hire. And has done a very admirable job. But if they have a bad year and they don't bring him back, could they get, there's 2 conferences are running college football right now. And this is one of the 34 jobs. Might be the worst of those 34, but it's still one of the 34. And they are not a place that's going to be 3 years and out in a normal circumstance. So could they hire somebody with a better resume? Probably. They probably could. And that's not a shot at David Braun. And I thought what he did in year one was excellent. But if this is the second year in a row of like, it's just kind of not it, I think they could make a move. But also Preston Stone is going to give them much better quarterback play. So if they make a bowl game, then they're good.
Yeah, and I think the stadium thing works twofold, because it'll perhaps make Northwestern as the athletic department feel like it could like use a fresh coat of paint as it goes into the stadium, but also like that's a pretty compelling sales pitch to maybe a coach that you otherwise wouldn't have an opportunity to land. If you say like, because they're going to have the newest, like kind of coolest stadium in college football and like an awesome practice facility. And I know we're maybe past the years of like facility wars driving this kind of conversations, but Northwestern would be a bit unique in that regard. And
come and win 7 games and we'll be more than happy. Like we have reasonable expectation. We're not expecting to contend for the playoff. That's not what this is about. Mm-hmm. So I would put Braun there. Loxley, again, I'm typically more like, hey, this guy has kind of done a pretty darn good job there. But what you said about the AD, 2024 was bad. If 2025 is bad, I very much could see them moving on.
I think if they have a losing season, I think he'd be done. Yeah.
Cincinnati and Satterfield, I mean, there's like this Luke Fickell shadow. It's funny that like Fickell and Fickell's old school are both on our lists here. And it's almost one of those like, could those two things be linked? It's like it didn't work for Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. He's out. He's available. Hey, is Cincinnati thrilled with Scott Satterfield? Let's run this back Rich Rod style. Just a little like a smaller gap in between. I don't think I think it could be fine at Cincinnati, but it just has. I think the fan base itself is still just. It was a high bar. It was kind of a okay hire, and if they don't make a bowl, then I think it could be just everybody decides to move on.
I think, and I don't know this. This is me, like maybe wish casting a little bit, but I would really love it if Cincinnati like hired Mike Mickens as his head coach. And I wonder if he's like, if there are people in power at Cincinnati, it was like, if Scott Satterfield doesn't win 9 games, we're going to go hire Mike Mickens.
Wow, that's a really good idea. Mike Mickens, who has done a great job as a secondary coach at Notre Dame. People thought maybe was going to be in consideration for that defensive coordinator job, and played at Cincinnati, and like is like a Cincinnati dude. And like
he would be like he would, because I'm sure when Luke left, people thought maybe we're going to hire like just promote Marcus Freeman, and they didn't get the opportunity to do that. This would be like a redo. It's like just a very similar coaching profile.
Yeah. Oh, that could be really good. And that's part of this too, is like I said, every conversation about moving on from a coach is like, well, it's much better if you know who you're moving on to. If it's a disaster and it's like anybody but this guy, we just got to get him out. That's one thing. If it's like, it's fine, but that guy's right there and we back channeled it and he would take it, and we'd this guy's not the worst coach ever, but we'd rather have that guy and he's ready. That could be more of a situation here. So you said Fickell stands alone. Also, Fickell's track record and resume compared to these other guys in this conversation is so much better than that.
Yes.
It is a weird spot, and it's not like it should be a cultural fit, right? It's one of those things like, like Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, we're going to get to in a second, like that kind of thing. Rich Rod at Michigan, right? It was, it's just the cultural fit was off from the get-go. Brian Kelly at LSU might be that. Fickell's a Midwest guy through and through, and is a fit at Wisconsin in that way. He bet on the wrong horse offensively, and it torpedoed the first 2 seasons. And now does that mean that like he's on the hook? Like if he's got to get it going now, or that's it. The point that people made about the extension, it's a common thing at Wisconsin. You get a 1-year rollover as long as you're there. But like they rolled over Paul Christ and added a year, and then fired him like 7 games into the season the next year. Mm-hmm. So it's not a guarantee of anything. I still would find it a little weird, given his track record of success, for Wisconsin to bail on Luke Fickell after 3 years. But yet we both have him in this spot. Why?
Well, the expectations of the program, I think, factor into it, because like Maryland, Northwestern, and Cincinnati, I don't think are sitting there thinking to themselves like we should be in the playoff conversation, but Wisconsin is. Yep. Wisconsin just saw Indiana make the playoff. there's actually like the Indiana effect on like this, like a pod of Big Ten teams, I think is interesting. But Wisconsin is definitely in that category. So I don't know. It's weird. Like the world of the expanded playoff to me, like represented a lot of upward mobility for a program like Wisconsin. But at the same time, I think it makes that job a little bit more of a pressure cooker than it used to be. So I don't know that there's as much of an appetite to let Luke Fickell figure it out beyond year 3 if they have another losing season.
So we'll talk about this in a bit. Again, there's just like a clear top 4 in the Big Ten. I think right now when you think about like national title odds and those kind of things, and it's like right now Indiana is kind of viewed as like that 5th team in the Big Ten behind Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and then Michigan. Mm-hmm. And in the previous decade, if you would have said, like, given the teams who are there, like, who's viewed as like the 5th team in the Big Ten, it would have been Wisconsin. Like, they would be at the top of that tier, and they're not. And this is the point that you're making. They want to be and think they should be, and I don't think it's unreasonable for them to think that they should be, right?
I don't think it's unreasonable. No, not at all. When they hired Luke Fickell, it felt like there was an expectation of like a little bit of a reset, but I think the reset ended up being much harder than people were expecting. And yeah, now Luke has to make up for it.
When you look at the odds to win the Big Ten on FanDuel, Ohio State's plus 180, Oregon's plus 230, Penn State plus 360, Michigan 8-1. Those are the clear 4 top. Next at 25-1. So the 5th team, like win the Big Ten odds, the 5th best odds are 25-1. There's such a clear top 4, and it's Indiana. And then there's a drop to Nebraska and USC at 45-1, right? Ooh. Wisconsin believes, given its recent history, Wisconsin should be that 5th team at like 18-1. That's what they think they should be. And they would like to be creeping toward the top 4. Instead, they're not even in the top 2/3 right now. So it also, sometimes it just doesn't work. And it doesn't mean, like, everybody just acknowledges, like, it's almost like maybe 8 out of 10 times this would have worked, but this is 2 to 10 that it didn't. And we just, instead of like banging our head against the wall, let's just move on. And Luke can go find a good job somewhere else, and Wisconsin can get a good coach in there. And it's not like you have to leave with your tail between your legs. It's not like there's bad blood. It's just like, man, did that miss? Wow. Who knew? How, like, it made so much sense, and it just whiffed all the way around. Stuff happens. Like, that's what don't you think that's, I don't know that there would be like animosity, but I think you can acknowledge that sometimes.
I think maybe it could just be like an issue of bad timing, right? And it just didn't work out for whatever reason. But that, like, now you're opening the door to like, oh, well, Luke Fickell's available. I wonder who Cincinnati might be interested in hiring if it moves over from Scott Satterfield. Because like I honestly thought Luke might never leave Cincinnati if it wasn't for Ohio State or like Penn State or Notre Dame. So maybe he would go back there and be content. Yeah.
If a year from now Cincinnati could have Luke Fickell as the head coach and Mike Mickens as a defensive coordinator, Scott Satterfield's done. And again,
no one, the Wisconsin's biggest fan this year is Scott Satterfield.
And that's not a shot. It's not a shot at all. I think there's a lot of good things that are happening. Like, Cincinnati had a fun, competitive team, played some fun games, and Scott Satterfield has been a very good head coach in the past. We can just kind of see. Sometimes you start putting the puzzle pieces together. Okay, so in the end, here's, I think, where we are. Do we agree on that 4 as the 4 hottest, that they are a tier unto themselves, right?
Yeah,
Loxley at Maryland, Satterfield at Cincinnati, Braun at Northwestern, Fickell at Wisconsin.
I don't think there's another coach of those other 24 teams that would be fired for job performance after the season.
So now we're agreeing on tiers, and now we're just debating semantics. Should
Correct.
The other 24 be happy? Or does it just mean that like 24 of 28 don't have a coach on the hot seat? Right now it's just words. I'm going to say, in the end, the statement that I wrote, I'm going to say it's true. 24 of 28 should be happy, because if you don't think your coach is about to be fired, then I think you should be pretty happy. But I would understand if, based on the phraseology, you say false.
I think I would say false.
Okay.
maybe be more like 22.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's go to number 2. Let's fire some Southern coaches here. Oh, look at this. This is a true or false statement. 2 of the 3 of LSU's Brian Kelly, Alabama's Kalen DeBoer, and USC's Lincoln Riley are in their final seasons at their schools. Because here's another point I want to make. These are big time, huge programs, huge famous hires, right? And we do not have a coach like that in the North at a program like this that is in this kind of peril. Luke Fickell has made the playoff. Wisconsin is a good program, but saying the Wisconsin coach might be on the hot seat compared to USC, Alabama, and LSU is not the same thing. So I just put these back to back to emphasize the fact that the South is on fire. And I am absolutely true on this. I would bet money on this. If someone made a parlay that 2 of the 3 won't be back in 26 at these schools, however that happens, they take a job somewhere else, they're fired, I don't know what, they're abducted by aliens. I am absolutely true on this, and I have a couple of coaching stats, but where are you?
I'm true. I think I'm all the way there on Lincoln Riley, 26 and 14, and like a worse record year by year. Like that's right in the wheelhouse for this. DeBoer and Brian Kelly are a little more complicated, but when you also introduce the notion of like, well, maybe they'll just want to leave. Maybe they don't get fired. Maybe they feel like they don't fit where they are and jump to something else that feels a little more comfortable. That can get me to a true on this pretty easily. Like I have a hard time seeing Brian Kelly getting fired when he's 29 and 11 and has 2 10-win seasons, but it's also LSU.
Yeah.
So like they could fire a coach for going 9 and 4 again, I think. And he doesn't have much in the way of like signature wins either. I think other than beating Alabama in his first year. So that would have to be more of a I don't belong here kind of decision, I think, on his part than a firing. But I think you get 2 out of 3 here. Yes.
Yeah. So Riley, as you said, 26 and 14, 17 and 10 in conference play. Brian Kelly, 29 and 11, moved the same year because everybody thought Lincoln Riley was going to go to LSU from Oklahoma. He went to USC, and then Brian Kelly went to LSU. Brian Kelly, 29 and 11, 17 and 7 in the SEC. Final AP ranking 16th, 12th, and then was not in the top 25 this year. And then Kalen DeBoer was 9 and 4. Nick, it was the most losses. Now, one of them was a bowl loss, but it's the most losses for Alabama since Nick Saban's first year, when he went 7 and 6. And then he never lost more than 3 games in a season since then. And I just think it could be a very quick. I think if LSU and Alabama, I think they're in the same spot. I think if they don't make the playoff, I think it is very possible. And I don't think both will make the playoff. So in this expanded world where you want your programs to matter, and like Tennessee made the playoff this year, and like, probably someone goofy in the SEC is going to make it this year, and that LSU and Alabama are going to sit there and be like, it's okay that we expanded the playoff when we missed it 2 years in a row with like a goofy loss in there that cost us. And like, I have no idea what the Alabama quarterback situation is going to wind up being, right? I think I am true on this because of what you said. I would guess this is, I don't think it's going to work for Lincoln Riley. I don't think Jaden Maiev is going to save him. And they lost a lot of guys in the portal. And I think it's just going to be a misfire. And there's also going to be somebody like who becomes the guy. Because I think this could happen too, that there's going to be guys sitting there that 2 of these 3 programs are going to be like, well, we'd definitely rather have him.
Yeah. You can back channel with Dan Lanning.
You can back. And I think
you're either LSU or Alabama.
I think you absolutely could do that. And then I think also like all these programs went with established guys. LSU hired the Notre Dame coach, Alabama hired the Washington coach, and USC hired the Oklahoma coach. And none of it's going great so far. So I think you maybe could head down a road where you go like young and get people fired up, and not just like Dan Lanning is, I completely agree. Like if these are open, and they're going to come after Dan Lanning like crazy. But like, what if he came after Fran Brown?
Yeah. Like Fran Brown. And I think I don't know. Like John Sumrall at Tulane is just sort of like lingering there with everyone assuming he's going to take an SEC head coaching job. I don't know that either of those fan bases would be totally geeked over John Sumrall, but that's another guy who's just sort of lingering out there. Yeah, there would be options for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, but again, the point of this is these are 3 gigantic programs in the non-North that are in this state. And we don't have a program like this in this state, right? James Franklin and Penn State would have been like, okay, who's the program that would be most likely to be lumped into something like this? And they just made the semifinal. And they brought a bunch of people back, and people are picking them to win the national title. Penn State could not be in a more different spot than LSU, Alabama, and USC in this offseason. And it's the kind of thing like this is offseason. Oh, Penn State, right? LSU would kill to be Penn State right now. USC would kill to be Penn State right now, right?
Yeah.
I just like to cram that in their cram hole sometimes. This is more a factual thing. Number 3. So we're both true on this. We'll have to see if we're right. Seeding for the 2025 college football playoff will change. This is going back to like the ongoing discussion. The SEC and Big Ten leaders met yesterday. They didn't come out. A bunch of reporters down there, thanks to all the reporters on the scene who were gathering this information. They didn't really say a ton of stuff, but both Tony Petitti, I think, and Greg Sankey were kind of like, we would like the seeding to change. Here's the issue, though, right? Starting in 2026, the SEC and the Big Ten are like officially in charge of the playoff and can ram stuff through. For this still one final year, it needs to be unanimous consent to change stuff. So they have to get the other conferences to agree to do away with the top 4 conference champs are the top 4 seeds. So that's the real question here. The SEC and the Big Ten want the seeding to change for 2025. But this is the last year where they can't just do that themselves. Do you actually think when all the conference commissioners meet next week in Dallas that they will unanimously agree to change the seeding for this season?
Yeah, I do. I think they will. I think they'll.
You do?
Yeah. Because I think it has administrative support from the 2 leagues that carry the most weight, and I think coaches too will favor it as well and get their ADs on their side, and then thus get the commissioners on their side. It just makes too much sense to me, right? Like if they go through the playoff where we just saw like Arizona State and Boise State get buys when like it just like no one thought that felt right.
But why would the Big 12 agree to that?
Because they don't have any other choice but to go along with the whims of the Big Ten and the SEC.
Because this is what I wonder is this their last chance to make a stand? Because it's going to change anyway. Like if they don't agree to this, my whole thing on a lot of these discussions are like I said it a million times, like it's already over. What are we arguing about? Everything already changed. The power rests of the SEC and the Big Ten. I feel like this is maybe the last thing that the other conference could say no to without any real ramifications, because it's all changing next year anyway. And if Brett Yormark wants to say, no, I want our champ to get a bye for the one more time, maybe the last time. And Jim Phillips says the same thing. I'm false on this, but I am curious how much of a showdown it might be. You know?
Yeah, no, you make a good point. And Yormark more than Phillips, but I think both of them aren't afraid to do a little bit of grandstanding. I don't think.
Oh, yeah. In a good way. You got a grandstand for your league.
In a way that's fine. Like in a way that gets attention on their leagues, which I think like that's their sort of their job. So, I could see that absolutely, but my hunch is that everyone just sort of plays ball and says yes, and they'll change.
Okay. Do you think it's better for the sport if they just say the top 4 seeds? So it's still going to be a 12-team playoff this year in 2025, and they just say the 4 best teams, the 4 top seeds in the college football playoff rankings, they get the buys. Do you think that's better for the sport?
I think it makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
To just true seeding based off of the committee protocol rather than arbitrarily slot a Mountain West team in there with a bye because you have to.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we have a little bit. Do I have another spot to do this? It's like I want to read. Maybe I'll just shove it in. I don't know. There's still people railing. A flame. College football is a flame. A flame. I'm almost just like curious about how this will go down, just from a maneuverability and negotiating standpoint. Like I think it's a little bit of a window into the power dynamic, which is all, again, it's changing no matter what. But is this the last stand? Is this Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips' last stand? Or can they get something out of like, well, yeah, we'll agree. We'll vote to change the seating for 2025. But let's have you guys not be too big of jackholes with the stuff you start doing in 2026. Right? I mean, is that to your point a little bit of
I think that would be the intention, but I don't know that that'll be the result. Yeah.
Olive branch. No. Okay.
Just snap that olive branch right
there
when the time comes.
Cram this branch. Okay. So we're curious. Like this is ball. This affects the ball. So we're curious next week what they decide to do with the seeding in 2025. I'll still say that they hold on. So I'll still say false it. It's not going to change. It's not going to change. This is false. You say it's true. All right. National championship odds. No more than 6 teams can really win the 2025 national title. This is my declarative statement. It's based on this, Bill. National championship odds on FanDuel. Ohio State 6-1, Texas and Oregon plus 650. Georgia 7-1, Penn State 8-1, Notre Dame 12-1. Then it's a jump to 16-1. So those are like 6 teams I think that in perception have separated themselves right now based both on the strength of the program and then what they mostly both based on the strength of the program. Because like as we detailed, Ohio State and Oregon are making over much of their rosters, but they're still on this list. You'll also note that it's 4 Northern teams and 2 Southern teams. But as we think about this, those are just odds. Would you look at that and think to yourself, yeah, I'm almost sure that the national champion comes out of that group of 6 and that's it? Or would you say, no, false? There's absolutely more teams than that can win it all.
I'm false, but I'm only adding one more, I think.
Oh.
I think I would say 7 instead of 6, and I would say Clemson in that mix.
Okay. Clemson at 18-1 is the best odds for any ACC team. Miami's at 40-1 for the next ACC team. The best odds for any Big 12 team, Arizona State at 100-1. And Kansas State, who is actually the betting favorite to win the Big 12, is 120-1. I am false. So you are, but so if I said how many teams could realistically win the national championship in 2025, you would say 7?
I'd say 7.
Because I think I would say there's a clear group of favorites, but I do think a wild card can win it. And here's part of why I think that, right? Was there a path for Arizona State to beat Texas, do you think? Like the way that game played out.
Yeah, they went to overtime.
Yeah. Okay. So that wouldn't have been an impossible thing for that to happen. And then Texas, who Texas beat in the next round then?
Texas did not
beat.
They lost to Ohio State.
Oh, they did. Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
That's too bad for Texas. Did Texas play a competitive game with Ohio State?
Yeah.
Yeah, they absolutely did. Do you think Arizona State could have played a competitive game with Ohio State?
No, not really.
No? Okay. Do you think that it's possible that like that collection of that this year's best team will not be quite as talented as Ohio State was this year? The best team in 2025 will not be quite as talented. Yeah. So here's my point. My roundabout point that I'm not making very well here is I think the Big 12 champ could win the national title. You get the right matchups and you have a couple breaks, but I think you can hang with that. I think the ACC champ can win the national title. Now, I don't know if the 4th best team in the SEC can win the national title. I don't know if the 4th best team in the Big 10 can win the national title. But in a 12-team playoff, once you get in, I just think that there are some of these outlier teams right now that Clemson and SMU, I think last year were less competitive than ACC teams will be most of the time in the future. And I think Arizona State was pretty darn competitive as the Big 12 representative and is not like the best that the Big 12 could ever put forward, right? So I just think I'm always, going to leave open the possibility in this world that I think there's probably 10 or 11 teams that could win the national title. And I understand, I agree with the top group of 5 or 6 or 7, but I'm going to wait to see how the season goes. And then I think I'll be able to point in October to like 4 more teams that I actually think could win it, that could win 3 or 4 games in the playoff for real. And that by the time the playoff starts, I think I might be I think 10 teams could win it. So I think that's why I think it's going to be more than 6 much of the time and why I would say this is false right now.
I think I could get there if you allow me to get some more data during the season. I think it's like because I want to see like what kind of jump Avery Johnson makes. I want to see what Arizona State looks like without Cam Scatterbo, but I really like Sam Levitt. You know what's Kansas look like? You know, presumably better than they started the season last year. Like, is all this hype for Texas Tech warranted or not? Like, there's a lot there's a lot there, but like in terms of teams that like I actually believe in right now, it's 7.
Okay. And I do think like I want to see like BYU's got its quarterback back. They didn't lose a ton of guys to the NFL draft. Like if Miami's gearing up for something here, I think the way I'm going to look at this is that the SEC and the Big Ten are always going to have a bigger group of national title contenders. But most of the time, I might be surprised by who it is. But I think most of the time, the best team in the Big 12 and the ACC can legitimately take its shot. And maybe 2 teams there. Maybe just one. Yeah. But even if it's just one, like the odds don't tell you that, right? I find it it's just crazy to me that like nobody in the Big 12 is better than 100 to 1 to win the national title. I do think
it's hard. It's hard, I think, to totally wrap your arms around the idea of like a Cinderella run in football. Like a game, yes. In Arizona State upsetting Texas, yes. But like winning 4 in a row against teams that are that much more talented than you. I just don't know that the dynamics of football lend itself to that. I'm willing to be proven wrong, but I don't know that we're going to see those type of runs all that often.
Could you couch Notre Dame as a Cinderella run this year? Because they were talented, but they had so many injuries. They got a transfer quarterback from Duke who kind of didn't throw it that much. Like I don't know. I don't know. Like, well, I mean,
I guess we've also seen like the bracket can break your way. Like,
yeah,
like if the Big 12 champ got Penn State's path to the semifinals, and then it's like you can beat a G5 team and you can beat like the last team into the field, and then take your swing in the semifinals and see what happens. Like, I guess I could see that. That's the thing that makes it, I guess, a little bit different. Well, no, I guess it's similar to basketball. Like the matchups matter, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but I don't know that there are going to be a whole lot of off seasons where I'm pounding the table, say like this Big 12 team is going to win the national title this year.
Yeah. And I'm leaving myself. I don't know who I'll be pounding the table through, but I think I will pound the table for the theoretical idea.
Yeah. Sure.
Somebody good. I don't know. Somebody good. Well, somebody good. I don't know. Mm-hmm. You know, just like one of those things. And I know there was like I think another show did a topic on this, and somebody suggested it of like I think a reader suggested of like, what if you just made an all-star team of like Pitt, Boston College, Syracuse, Rutgers, like, and I like did that every year. And it's just like, say you had Syracuse of 2024, but they had Donovan Ezeraku, right? Like, could that team win the national title? And that's not saying let's make an all-star team, but it's like a high-flying offensive attack with one defensive game breaker, right? I don't know. Mm-hmm. And I think like as the top comes down, I think I'm more open to it. And I'm open to a Cinderella. But I am, and this is like the NCAA basketball tournament. I'm much more open to like, again, the best team in the Big 12 or the ACC. So like the best team in a mid-major than like, because I actually have a point later. Like, I think the consternation about some of this, like you're going to guarantee 4 spots to the SEC. The 4th team in the SEC is going to get drubbed when it gets into the playoff in the first round most of the time, actually. So I'm not exactly sure what people are most afraid of, but like those teams aren't going to win the national title. It's like, oh, you got it at 9-3. It's like, yeah, no, you proved that you were pretty mid. And so if you are just like offended that they're even there, okay, you're offended, but they're not going to win it all. That's not who's going to win it. For real, they're not.
Yeah, but also like Cinderella hasn't won either in basketball. Like not won at all in a long time.
Yeah. No, that's true. 1985. Were you alive in 1985? I watched it.
I was not. I was born in 1988.
Also, you don't acknowledge it because Villanova is not, in fact, in Philadelphia.
I was born in the city of Philadelphia where Villanova is not located. Correct.
Yes, that is true. All right. This is the last one before the break. If Illinois isn't this year's Indiana, it'll be Iowa. Just like the most, I put the Iowa, Indiana, and Illinois banners behind me to make this point. if Illinois is not Indiana, Iowa will be Indiana. It's super confusing, but we talked about a possible torch passing. Indiana plays Illinois on September 20th. Indiana actually then plays Iowa on September 27th. And the point is, like, who is the kind of not on the top tier team? And it doesn't have to be Big Ten, but like, who's the most Cinderella playoff team of 2025? That Indiana was that of 2024. So we've talked a lot about that it could be Illinois, but what do you think? Is it true that if it's not Illinois, then Iowa's next up as the best candidate for that?
I was pretty torn on this one. I think I'll lean false.
Okay.
Because Iowa's schedule is not particularly easy. Like I have 1, 2, 3, 4 games that could very possibly be losses. And that's just like, so you're asking me if they're going to definitely go 10-2 or probably maybe more likely have to go 11-1 to be in this situation. And I don't think that's going to happen when they have to play Penn State and Oregon in addition to Iowa State and Minnesota.
Yeah. Do you have another do you have a number 2 candidate? Do we agree that Illinois is the number 1 candidate to be Indiana?
Yes.
So do you have a number 2 candidate?
Not really, because I don't even know. I mean, maybe would Utah qualify?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, maybe because I don't even know that I would put whoever wins the Big 12 in that same kind of air because they're a conference champion. But I could see Kansas State and Utah maybe separating themselves from the rest of the Big 12 and being perhaps 2 Big 12 teams that make the playoff this year. So maybe a Utah, I would say. I don't think it's anyone else in the Big 10 based off what I know of those rosters and how the schedule's set up.
Okay. I made it. So I will say true. I do think Iowa, because even the idea of, and now we're getting into would 10-2 make it, but part of the,
we both really like the over 7.5 for Iowa.
We
but
do.
We're also,
we do.
We're talking
for sure.
two or three more wins you have to find there.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a part of the question is if they're really look really good in 10 wins against Minnesota and Iowa State and stuff like that, and then are at least moderately competitive in one of the games against Oregon and Penn State, would 10-2 get them in?
Those are both at Kinnick too. They're both so Penn State, Minnesota, Oregon, all in a row are at Kinnick.
So I think it possibly could get them in. It's like this question to me is not, is Iowa going to go 11-1? But well, we have a whole offseason to talk about Iowa. Yeah. Iowa's going to be interesting, and we know where they're losing some really important defensive guys, but Iowa's going to be interesting. Okay, we'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll do 5 more true or false questions, and then we'll get to what you're watching, what you eating, what you're thinking next on Kings of the North. Back on KOTN. Thanks for being here. Like, subscribe, tell a friend. Number 6. The playoff is threatening the importance of rivalries. This is a theoretical discussion that I mentioned the other day. I got into on a radio show, and I wanted to have a deeper discussion of it here. On its face, do you find this to be true, Landis? The nationalization of the sport, the emphasis on the playoff, and nobody cares about regular season stuff.
Can I set this one out? I honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I want to say false, but I do think there could be some truth to it. Because I'll use this, you mentioned this the other day on the Ohio State show that we do, and then it was just one person, but one response to that was Ohio State won the national title. I don't care that Ohio State lost to Michigan. And I don't think that person speaks for the entire fan base, but even if there are some people thinking that way, and I think there probably are, then I guess the answer to this question has to be true in some respect, right?
So to me, it's, does that person think that at 11:59 on the last Saturday in November as Ohio State, Michigan is kicking off? So that's rivalries matter to me in the moment. Rivalries are of the moment. And when you're getting ready to play that game as a player, as a coach, as a fan, do you still feel like there's an end all be all, man, it's going to kill me if my team doesn't beat my rival this Saturday? Do you still feel that? Or as it's happening, is it lessened? Now, because I'm mental health after the fact, it helps you deal with the loss better. I'm all for that. Good. Like it doesn't have to be that way. But I still think it's going to matter to people, even that person, even that Ohio State fan that would say that. I would challenge you to say that you don't care as that game's getting ready to be played. Because, but you might say that as Ohio State is getting ready to play Texas, or you might say that as Minnesota is getting ready to play Cal or whatever, like an otherwise big game, but like, if we don't win this, I mean, it's not but your rival's something different. So I still think my point in all this is I still think college football can have it all. And I think college football can have it all more than any other sport. And I think what college football was lacking previously for too long was a true national champion, was an opportunity to chase a national championship. And again, as people get all wound up about this stuff, it's like, if you go 4-4-2-2, the Big 12 is only going to have 2 slots. The ACC is only going to have 2 slots. It's like, do you know what it took for West Virginia to have a chance to win the national championship the old way? They had to be one of the 2 best teams in the country. So now it's like they have to be one of the 2 best teams in their conference, and maybe the 3rd team will get in. That is so much more opportunity than the old way. But I don't know why any of that lessens the backyard brawl. I don't know why any of that lessens Paul Bunyan's axe. Like, I guess I would like it explained to me, because it's either that you are a team that can compete for the national title, or you're not. But if you're not, even if you have great opportunity, like the rivalries are like the biggest thing going. And it's not like there are 70 teams competing for national titles every year. So we're expanding opportunity, but I don't think we're killing rivalries.
Can you though, I do think you're asking people to like extricate feelings and consequences, because the consequences now are very different. But the feelings you think can remain the same?
Yes. I do not think feelings must be. Look at you. Fancy stats with the fancy words. Yes, you have clarified my point for me. Previously, rivalries were often tied to consequences. But I do not think the current distaste, dislike, hatred, familiarity that exists in rivalries must be tied to consequences. Because I think you can want to beat your rival in a parking lot, on the moon, in April, in June, in December. If you're playing your rival, you hate them whenever you face them, and you always want to beat them. And I think like that's almost the definition of a rivalry. So then after the fact, if you are not curled up in a fetal position because losing that game still hurt, but it didn't ruin your entire year and your entire life, good. But I do not define that as like ruining rivalries or threatening the importance of it. I think that's a bonus. No fetal position, but you still hate him at 11:59 as you're getting ready to kick off.
Okay. I think I'm with you on that idea. And I actually do think too, because the immediate aftermath, maybe you're not in the fetal position, but you're not feeling great because you don't know what's to come. Right. You know, there's opportunity, I guess, for some teams anyway, not every team, for some teams to erase that feeling or still strive for something a little bit greater even than that rivalry, but it's not a guarantee. So I still think the aftermath of those losses that people would have felt, prior to this past season are still there. There's just the opportunity to move on for them a little faster than we have in the past.
Like the playoff has not affected Army Navy, right? Army and Navy still hate each other, right? No matter what.
Yeah, I mean, not yet, right? Like, I don't know. What the year when Army and Navy have to play twice in 3 weeks. I don't know what that's going to be like.
Because they might be playing in a conference championship game after the regular season game.
Yeah.
So I looked at, there are 21 games that I would call rivalries that are scheduled for week 14 this season, that I just think these games, now it's not every game, and again, we talked about some of the Big 12 rivalries are being played in October, and I've come around on it. I think it's great. But these games, I would say all these games, I don't think it matters where these teams are in the playoff race. I don't think it matters if they have a winning record or a losing record. I think these teams want to beat each other for the sake of beating each other because their fans don't like each other and it's bragging rights, right? Mm-hmm. And I would say these games are not affected by this. Iowa, Nebraska, Alabama, Auburn, Florida State, Florida, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Kentucky, Louisville, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Clemson, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Texas, Oregon, Washington, Wisconsin, Minnesota, UCLA, USC, Ohio State, Michigan, Northwestern, Illinois, Indiana, Purdue, Oregon State, Washington State, Wake Forest, Duke, UNC, NC State, Virginia Tech, Virginia, Arizona, Arizona State, and Houston, Baylor. That's a lot of games. If they go, Doug, Houston, Baylor. But still, like if there's a lot, that's a lot of games to me that I just think exist outside of the playoff race. So because before it's like there used to be no playoff race. Like before, like why did these teams hate each other in 1973? Because they wanted to beat each other. Like there was nothing else. Right? And if you said to some team like, oh, like I really wanted to win the ACC championship in 1973, I still don't think that matters as much as beating your rival. Duke wants to beat North Carolina, right? So I think I'm still kind of confused sometimes about like why, like what is it that you think lessens it? And again, when I was on this radio show, they were like, oh, well, people like if you rest players, because you're already in the playoff. Well, that's so few teams. That's at the very, very, very top of the sport.
I also don't know that would ever happen. I don't think.
Also, get back to me when Ohio State rests players against Michigan. Are you nuts? I think it's a fundamental. You don't. To me, when people say that, they don't understand their own sport. So, I think the idea that like Kansas and Missouri don't play each other every year, the idea that the Holy War went away for a while and now it's back because both teams are in the Big 12, the idea that there are some rivalries that the Big 12 didn't protect and they should have, right? I mean, there are things like that. That's what hurts rivalries is not playing them. But as long as you're playing them, I don't think the other stuff matters all that much. Consequences, you make a very good point. But I think feelings and hatred are separate from consequences. I don't know.
I actually think that's probably true for most college football fans, but maybe like less so for college football media, which maybe was why this notion might even be talked about a little bit. Because the consequences and like putting people on the hot seat, hirings, firings, related to the results of these games are like where media's bread is buttered, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's probably two different points of view there that maybe complicate what this actually is.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it remains again, like to talk with somebody who is very much on the other side of this. College football is killing rivalries. Like why? As long as they're still being played, explain to me why they're dying. So I would be curious to hear that. All this makes me. It's like we have a lovely discussion here. I think you're the smartest college football person I want to talk to. I don't want to talk to anybody but you. But sometimes it's like, let's get these other people on here to fight with them who are saying these things because I would like to hear them explain it to me. All right, the next one. This is very brief because I'm very curious. This is a football show. We only do football. Well, there are lots of other college shows that do other sports too. We don't. The SEC is good at basketball because they know their run of football dominance is over. This has been like a thing that the SEC, I looked at the latest ESPN bracketology. They're going to get like 13 NCAA tournament bids, and it's like the craziest thing ever. I don't care at all. At all. But I do find it interesting that they have something to hold on to because otherwise they'd be going straight to baseball or gymnastics or some other thing that the SEC is good at a lot of sports, right? And just like other conferences are good at other sports, but they would be going to the sports that they're traditionally good at. It is wild to me. The SEC is on track to get 13 bids. The ACC in bracketology has 4. Like, this is not even necessarily a Northern conversation. This is our 3-minute conversation about SEC basketball. Is it connected somehow? Did they put resources into basketball that has somehow lessened their success in football? Is it coincidental? Is it just it doesn't matter at all? I don't know. But like a lot of people got jacked up about Alabama, Auburn and basketball, which kind of was wild to me that like that's where we are in that sport.
I think it's more coincidental than anything else. I would say false. I don't think one necessarily has to do with the other. I was reading an article in The Athletic from I think a year ago or 2 years ago that Kyle Tucker wrote, where they were talking about like the SEC's rise in basketball, and they tied it back to the 2015-16 season and the 2016 tournament, where the SEC I think only had 3 teams in a tournament, and everyone was just looking around like, we're good in everything else. Why are we not good at men's basketball?
Okay.
And Greg Sankey like hired some people from like the Big East to I actually think like help guide SEC programs to make better coaching hires. And if you look across the SEC now, like there's like at the top of the league, they get some pretty good basketball coaches. They're also old this year. I was like, I looked way too much. I looked into this way more than I had to, but I was looking at like Ken Pom.
Yeah.
So there are 7 SEC teams in the top 20 of Ken Pom, and 5 of those teams are top 30 in experience.
Oh, okay.
So they're old this year, in addition to being better coach than they used to be.
Yeah. As John points out, the Big 12 was like kind of claiming that basketball mantle for a long time. And like Kansas is kind of falling off a cliff. And I don't know. I don't know what happened there. Do you want to guess how many of our 28 Northern college football teams, how many of their men's basketball teams are in the bracket right now, according to bracketology of the 28?
12.
My God, you're good. That's exactly right. In the Big 10, Maryland, Wisconsin, Oregon, Purdue, Michigan, Illinois, Nebraska, Ohio State, and Michigan State. And then 3 in the Big 12, Iowa State, BYU, and West Virginia. On the bubble, according to this, Kansas State and Indiana. I know Kansas State's doing some good stuff lately.
Indiana's on the bubble? Isn't their coach like
get fired?
Reading books during the game?
I did a thing last offseason about like the best. I liked it, like a show about like the best combined men's basketball, women's basketball, football programs of our top 28. I thought it was a really interesting conversation. Nobody watched it. So this is why it's a 5-minute segment this year instead of a whole thing. I was like, this is great. Let me talk about Iowa State women's basketball team and why Iowa State is the best combination of those 3 sports of anybody in the North. It's all about Jamie Pollard. They're good. Nobody watched it, so it's fine. I'm just talking about it's like a big, and I couldn't even get Jamie Pollard on the show. I was like, man, can we just talk about like running an athletic department? He doesn't have time for that. Okay, so it's a 6-minute segment now. Next up, so we both say this is false. Mine is I don't care. You're false. I don't care. Number
false,
8,
but fun to point out is where I'm at. Yeah.
But fun to that's good. Number 8, the North will have at least half of the NFL draft's first-round picks. So I went through Daniel Jeremiah's draft on NFL.com. I think he's pretty good at this. Do you want to know how many he had of the North in his first round? They just won the other day.
I would guess 15.
17.
Okay.
So should I read them?
Sure.
Abdul Carter from Penn State, Travis Hunter from Colorado, Mason Graham from Michigan, Shadur Standers from Colorado, Ty Warren from Penn State, Mike Green, who's from Marshall. He's an edge rusher from Marshall. We're taking it. We're taking Marshall. We take Marshall. Will Johnson from Michigan, Kenneth Grant from Michigan, Gray Zabel, who's an offensive lineman from North Dakota State. That's pretty darn north. We're taking him. Colston Loveland from Michigan, Ashton Genty from Boise State, Josh Simmons from Ohio State, Travion Henderson from Ohio State, Emeka Ibuka from Ohio State, Darius Alexander is a defensive tackle from Toledo. We're taking him. Donovan Jackson from Ohio State, and Josh Connerly from Oregon. 4 from Michigan, 4 from Ohio State, 2 from Penn State, 2 from Colorado, 1 from Oregon, and then a sprinkling of these other guys who are not necessarily from one of our 28 schools, but if you're north, we're taking you. I will be tracking this like crazy during the first round of the NFL draft. Will the North win the first round? But it is an interesting combination, Bill, of like this second group of Michigan guys. They had a great draft last year, but it was more quantity. It wasn't as many first-round guys because their most talented guys from their national championship team stuck around for another year. And to think about like that, what that team, Colston Loveland, Mason Graham, Will Johnson, Kenneth Grant, now in this draft is awesome. Ohio State's like where the Ohio State guys fit into here is probably the tipping point. But like what Colorado has with 2 guys that are going to go in the top 10, Penn State with 2 guys who are going to go in the top 10, it's just another data point of like the South's absolute dominance. Of course, the SEC is going to have the most draft picks. The SEC, the South is going to have more draft picks overall than the North. But there's just a data point, man. It's pretty close. Either way, it's going to be, even if the South has more, it's going to be pretty close. And that's not always how it has been.
No, I'm true here. I'm with you because I was looking at Dane Brugler's big board that he published last week on The Athletic. I think he had 15 of the top 32 were from the North and 25 of the top 50 were from the North. It's including, some of the guys from North Dakota State and Toledo, not all power conference guys, but that just felt a little different to me. And I'm with you that like the South will probably have more, will have more overall picks, but I'm wondering if that gap might shrink too when we look at all 7 rounds of the NFL draft.
Ben Morrison from Notre Dame, the corner who was hurt all year, is in some first rounds, is not in this first round, for instance. And again, I just think there's a couple other Ohio State guys that might push to get in there. So like I think it's gonna be the North is either gonna have like 17, 16, or 15. And if they have 17, I'm gonna be tweeting it like a maniac. And if they have 15, I'll probably ignore it because the South will have won. But it's just the point. And again, I'll get all the data before the draft. Sometimes I wonder, like, people, how much do you think our audience, our Northern college football audience, cares about NFL draft talk?
I don't think a ton in my experience I don't think college football fans care all that much about NFL draft talk. I think they like to look back and brag, but I don't know that they care like Josh Simmons' arm length compared to some other tackles, like that kind of stuff.
Right. No, that's good. So we'll try to limit it then. All right. Number 9. So we both think this is true. We're going to say this is true. At least half.
Yep.
Number 9. This is for you. The most successful first-year coach in 2025 will be Casey Keeler at Temple. And it's just an interesting collection of first-year coaches. So maybe you think it'll be somebody else, but what do you think of this?
Yeah, as much as I love KC Keeler, and I would love to see Temple do better as a program, I'm false here because it's hard. It's a hard job. Temple in the last 4 years is like prior to that it was actually not bad. Jeff Collins did a nice job there before he left for Georgia Tech. Matt Rule obviously did a nice job there. And even Al Golden was pretty good at Temple too. Last 4 years are 10-33 and 4-27 in the American Athletic Conference. And it's not like Casey Keeler went out there and brought a bunch of guys in via the transfer portal, and I think is going to make Temple considerably better. Temple also plays non-conference games against Oklahoma and Georgia Tech, so you can knock off 2 losses right there. I don't know. I don't like maybe. And if he has a winning season, the answer to this, like he would be the answer to this question. I don't really care what any other coach does, given how hard this job is. But I don't like looking at some of the other coaches. I don't know that he's going to be the answer here. He only has 4 losing seasons in 31 years as a head coach, though. So
I think this is right. I think there's 25 new head coaches in FBS, but only 5 in the power conferences. So it is not like a huge, exciting crop of who it's going to be. The power conference first-year coaches in the ACC, Bill Belichick at North Carolina, Jake Dickert at Wake Forest, moving from Washington State. In the Big 12, Scott Frost at UCF and Rich Rodriguez at West Virginia. And then in the Big 10, Barry Odom at Purdue. And that's it. And the SEC didn't have any. So like sometimes this is like, oh, like the new coach, whatever. Like it's not a very interesting discussion because there's not a lot of high profile things. Maybe, I mean, Jake Dickert at Wake Forest like might be the better answer to this question right now.
My answer, the guy that I zeroed in on for this answer was Bronco Mendenhall at Utah State.
Okay.
Utah State won 6-7 with an interim head coach last year.
Okay. On this list, do you know who I did not know got a head coaching job, but is a head coach? Phil Longo. Did you know that?
Yeah, he replaced Casey Keeler.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that Phil Longo landed on his feet. Congratulations to Phil Longo. But this is just, I mean, again, this often, like last year, it was like Kalen DeBoer was in this group. You know what I mean? And it's just interesting, like how there just was not a ton of coaching turnover at the very, very top of the sport. All right. So last coaching question, number 10. So we're both false on this. But
Yes.
I don't even know who the right answer would be. But I just want to throw you Casey. It's North.
I'll talk about Casey Keeler any chance we can get. One last thing on that question. I was looking like the highest rated by 24/7 Sports incoming transfer class among the first year head coaches is West Virginia's. Just
okay.
They also have the most with 31, but
yeah. No, yeah, Rich Rod rip it off a 9-3. Absolutely could be the answer here too. All right. Last one. The battle for most annoying head coach is between Dabo Swinney, Brian Kelly, and Bill Belichick. And I wanted to end on this because here's my other thing. And if we have people in the chat who want to answer this, who is the most annoying Northern head coach to other fans? And so this is like, I mean, if it's your rival, you hate that coach no matter what, but kind of just from a distance that I don't even really follow that program, but that guy just annoys me. I'm not sure how annoying we are. Are we that annoying up here anymore?
You'll get a lot of James Franklin. You'll get a lot of Dan Lanning.
I think people thought Ryan Day was annoying for a while, and maybe they think it now too.
Yeah.
The Lou Holtz stuff. I think Jim Harbaugh probably was the winner here for a while because he like did his things his way and didn't care what anybody thought. And that annoys people sometimes. But don't you think, I think these three guys, Clemson, LSU, and the new guy at North Carolina, and I didn't throw Lincoln Riley in here because I got to let the guy live at some point. But again, like I just
Can I introduce the fourth into the group?
Yeah. The Mount Rushmore.
Shane Beamer.
Oh.
Yeah. He's rising. Watch out for him.
He's rising. Look out.
He's got some momentum.
Do people think Brett Bielema's annoying?
I think, maybe less so than they used to. But I think people feel like Bielema's got a bit of a shtick that maybe is not for them.
Yeah. Lori says Kurt Signetti. I think maybe by the end.
Siggs is up there. Yeah. Yeah.
By the end, like some people weren't feeling that. Our guy John is nominating both James Franklin and Brett Bielema. I'm not blind to this. And I've also like, I think Dabo as an underdog is actually less annoying than he was when he was at the top of the sport and like spouting off about stuff. But like little try hard Clemson, like coming out of nowhere to maybe like actually be good again this year, I think is a little more interesting. Lori also agrees on Brett Bielema. So, okay. I mean, I'm open to this, but I don't think we need to do a whole show on the most annoying coaches in college football. I'm so annoyed by Bill Belichick. I know I'm going to say it every show. I'm so annoyed by it. I'm so glad he's not in the North. Oh my God. I don't want it. All right. So you agree? I'm still going to say true that the battle is between these three.
Lane Kiffin too. I don't know.
Up there.
Yeah,
a lot of candidates.
I think the answer, I think true, because I do think the answer is going to be Belichick, and it might not even be of his own doing. It'll just be the way people talk about him. Yeah.
Doug says I think Franklin might be more annoying to media than fans. That's possible. I mean, I
personally don't find him annoying. At times, like a bit disingenuous, but I would say like what college football coach isn't that way sometimes. I thought I saw a lot of like blowback to the Franklin's performance in the press conference at Marcus Freeman from fans.
People did not like that.
Yeah.
That like coming out of that press conference, that's the latest thing here. I was at that. I didn't sense it in the moment. Coming out of the room, there were some people who were like, oh, I don't know about that. Marcus Freeman looked pretty ticked. And then there started to be like reporting of like, you're hearing that like he was. And then like, I think definitively by the end, his players after the game were like, he was mad. So if you are able to annoy and anger the opposing coach at the pregame news conference, that's pretty good. That's a pretty compelling case for making a list of annoying. Like, again, I wasn't like particularly annoyed, but like, I don't think Marcus Freeman is like a short fuse kind of guy who's looking for a fight, and he didn't like it. So let's probably throw him in there. Okay. Yeah. Last break. When we come back, what you watching, what you eating, what you thinking on Kings of the North. Back on KOTN, producer Mike was throwing out a couple other names like Deion Sanders. Do you think people think Deion Sanders is still annoying? I thought people thought Deion was like blustery, but then they kind of backed it up this year. You still think he annoys some people?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I thought there was like the particular.
He doesn't annoy me. Again, he doesn't annoy me. But,
he doesn't annoy me. I thought there was like the like media stuff where, like, he was like basically at the beginning of the year, he was saying like we're going to be good, and then there was some media reaction of like, oh, why do you think you're going to be good? And it's like, oh no, they were pretty good.
They were overcovered. They were overcovered in his first year, and then I think probably appropriately covered in year 2.
Yeah, and then they tied for first in their conference.
Yeah.
So I don't know. They had the Heisman winner.
Mm-hmm.
So who was like 50-1 before the season. And I think Deion would have been like, Travis Hunter's going to win the Heisman. People are like, that's so annoying that he's saying that. It's like, he was right. So I don't know. Okay. What are you watching, Bill Landis?
I watched Carry On, the movie, the Netflix movie with
yes,
Jason Bateman and Taron Egerton. And I really liked it until the end.
Oh,
like I don't.
Yeah,
I won't give away entirely what happens. But like I thought, like it was an interesting conceit for like a suspenseful thriller kind of movie. I liked that it was all sort of enclosed into one area for the entire movie. But then like the guy who's like kind of hapless turns into Jack Bauer at the end, and I'm just like, okay, like you have to suspend a lot of disbelief with a movie like that. I understand that, so I'm not going to ding it too hard. But I don't know that transformation was earned necessarily.
Yeah,
throughout watching the movie.
Yeah, no, it was enjoyable. Again, like this is the kind of movie that I think people talk like they used to make movies like this, like just kind of like it's a movie for adults. It's not a superhero movie. It's it's not gory. It's kind of like tense and it's a thriller, but it has like real actors in it. So. I thought it was enjoyable. I think that I wish that kind of movie was still released in the theater.
Yeah. The only thing I will say, like, and again, I'll try very hard not to give it away, but like toward the end, when like the assassin guy is like instructed to take care of somebody, and to do that, he just like marches through the airport trying to it's like, come on.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Like who that's people don't do that. like it's just like that's not how that person would have reacted in that particular moment. So but again, like I thought it was enjoyable. I thought Jason Bateman did a nice job as like a bad guy, like in kind of a role you don't always see him in. So that was cool.
I like low hat.
I like Taron Egerton too. I think he's very good.
Yeah, he's Elton John, right? And Eddie the Eagle.
He is Elton John and Eddie the Eagle. Yeah.
Is he Stephen Hawking? No,
that was Eddie Redmayne. Okay.
Oh, I got Taron Egerton and Eddie Redmayne confused.
Yeah.
That seems like a thing that an old man would do, right?
And Taron Egerton is also like, did you watch the Sing movies, the animated movies? He's a singing gorilla.
Oh, the singing gorilla. Yeah. Are the singing, the animated, those singing gorilla movies, do they just sing, or is there a plot to it also?
The plot is like, what if animals were on American Idol?
Okay, you've watched it.
I saw the first one. Yeah.
Am I okay if I don't see it?
Fine. You're fine.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Now, but I'm like, I don't want to watch Singing Gorillas. Now I'm going to talk about the Muppets. So it's a very fine line. So I was in Disney World over the weekend. We went on a bus trip with my daughter's band. And there's this, if people have been to Hollywood Studios and Disney World, there's this Muppet movie, like 14-minute movie that's been there forever, and they're tearing it out. Like it's going to be replaced. They're building a new land there. And it's just like a very cute like thing. There's actually like parts of it that I love and then parts of it that I hate. But it's like when they get away from the core Muppets, I have no interest. But like if you can feed me Kermit and Fozzie and Sam the Eagle and Miss Piggy, like I'll take that all day. And I know they've lingered in pop culture for a very long time. I think it was reminded with the SNL stuff this week that like there were Muppets on the very first episode of Saturday Night Live. That's 50 years ago. But I still even think they should be like more successful. Because I just think they hit I think there's a lot of commonality there. They did like a Muppets reboot a couple years ago that's on Disney Plus right now that you can watch it. Like they've tried it a couple times, like it didn't quite hit. It was like a workplace comedy with like Kermit as like Michael Scott kind of, but like I thought it was actually very funny and it didn't hit. But I I want more Muppets. Are you in favor? So I got to watch that Muppets thing for the last time, but I want more Muppets. I want more Muppets.
Yeah, I like the Muppets. I haven't I just watched like the Muppet Christmas Carol and like I'll rewatch like Muppets Take Manhattan or like I haven't seen any of the newer stuff. Did you see like like Jason Segel did a Muppets movie?
Yeah.
Maybe he's done multiple Muppets movies. I can't remember. Like were those good?
Good. Yeah. No, I thought they were good. Am I a man or am I a Muppet? Yeah. No, you'll like it. Go watch that.
Okay. But yeah, I like the Muppets. I like Gonzo. I like Rizzo the Rat too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm very much. I think I like Fozzie the best. John's asking us to pick our favorite. I think I like Fozzie the best, but also Gonzo right there. Gonzo right there. Me. Oh, yeah. Also Beaker and Professor Bunsen Honeydew. Huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give me Beaker all day.
Yeah.
I'm sad. Muppet, tearing the Muppet right out. What are you eating?
Do you ever do the thing where you just like dig through your freezer or whatever to see what's in there, like try to clear it out, like that's what you're gonna have for dinner? Yeah. So we did that.
Yeah.
We didn't do that like for the actual meal the other night, and we don't typically like have desserts with our dinner when we eat at home. But for on Monday night we did, because we had this box, and I don't know how long it's been in our freezer. Somebody at some point got us what are the Omaha steaks, and with that came a box of caramel apple tartlets, which are just like little mini apple pies, basically.
Okay.
With like a little sprinkle of salt on them. And I made them in the air fryer, and there were 4 of them. I ate 3 of them. They were so good.
They were so good.
They were incredible. And I don't know if cooking them in the air fryer made them better than they would like than actually baking them, but like super flaky. And like the salt on the outside was like a nice flavor touch that I wasn't expecting. But honestly, like one of the I'm a like apple pie is like my favorite. So like I'll eat it at every turn, but I'm also particular about it. One of the better, maybe the best, honestly, maybe the best, like apple pie sort of leaning dessert item that I've had.
And it was in your freezer for like 8 months, just waiting for you?
Sitting there. It could have been in my freezer for 2 years for all I know. I have no idea.
Oh, will you seek them out now? Did you pull up Omaha Steaks online and order some more tartlets?
I kind of want to go on there and order some more tartlets. Yeah. I actually don't care for the steaks that like I like steak, but I would just rather like go to the butcher and buy steaks than have some that have been sitting in my freezer forever. But yeah, if I can go on Omaha Steaks and just order, I don't know, 50 boxes of caramel apple tartlets, I might do that.
I will say I am of the age, and I guess you are now too, where just the fact of having clean out the freezer night, even if the food is terrible, there's a sense of accomplishment. Like that you did something with your day. It's like, what'd you do today? It's like, well, I ate 2 things out of my freezer that had been in there probably for multiple years, and I felt good about it. So we just had one of those. I just did that a little bit too. I cleared out some. What did I clear out? I cleared out some stuff from Costco, so like some little appetizer things. I've got some old empanadas that I have my eye on. Nice. This is the same thing for me. I do this a lot. Just clearing. Oh, I'm so old. Clearing things out. I do that like my change dish in my car. Do you do this? Do you have a change dish in your car? And if you get to the point, it's like, man, my change dish is pretty full. I'm going to go into the convenience store and pay my entire $1.39 bill in the convenience store with change for my change dish. And I come out of there and I feel like I ran a marathon. It's I won the gold medal in clearing out my change dish. Clearing things out. That's oldness.
I don't collect change anymore like I used to though. Like I feel like that I wonder because like I don't ever have cash on me. So I don't ever pay for anything with cash to get change. But like when I was younger, I had when I say I mean my parents and I stole it from them, had like a Hawaiian punch jug that we would just fill with quarters.
Yeah.
But like it's a big jug. And like when you got to the end, there was like $500 in quarters in there.
Yeah. And then like
we don't do that anymore.
You cash that out before you go on vacation. You get a little spending money on vacation. Yeah. That's how you live.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm still old enough. I pay with cash enough that I have change in my change dish.
I hardly ever pay with cash. I never have it on me.
When I go in there and it's like it's $1.39 and I hand the cashier a $1 bill and 39 pennies, That's as good as life gets for me at this point. That's it.
I think the only
It's
thing in
peak.
my life that I regularly pay cash for is when I get my hair cut, but I pay the same amount every time and I don't get change back.
You don't get change. Okay.
Yeah.
Doug says he uses cash once a month. Oh, that'd be a good question. I'd like this. Continuing plans. I'd like us to get to like a question of the day about life on KOTN. How often do you pay with cash? Would be a good question. All right. I'm eating because I ate it at Disney World too. I think it's possible that when it's in the right circumstance and it's done correctly, I'm not sure anything hits harder from a food standpoint than good popcorn.
Oh yeah. Fresh corn. Yeah.
Fresh, hot corn. So like they have popcorns like in amusement parks, like most amusement parks have that. Sometimes that's just exactly what you want. And again, like the movie theater going experience is like, I don't know how many people would say like, what's your favorite food? If someone said, what's your favorite food? And you said popcorn. I feel like that would be kind of a weird answer. But in the moment, and again, this is like my kickoff at 11:59, 1 minute before I'm sitting down and eating a tub of popcorn, that's my answer.
Yeah.
Like walking around like, oh, like there's a million different snacks, all this sweet stuff that you can guess. Like, I don't want that. I want hot corn. And like popcorn, microwave popcorn's fine. It's good. We all do it. But fresh, hot corn out in the world, when it hits, what's better?
No, it's hard to beat. Now, are you a traditional butter popcorn, or are you going kettle corn?
No, I don't want the, like, I'll eat kettle corn, but when it hits for me, I don't want any sweetness. I want salty butter. Bang. Hot, salty butter. But I don't even know if I need the popcorn. If we just boiled butter and sprinkled salt on it and poured it down my throat, that might be enough too.
You want a bucket of butter and salt is what you want.
But right, I'm not crazy. People love corn, right? Lori loves popcorn, right?
Popcorn's
and it's
great.
not that expensive. Yeah. So it hit for me at Disney World. All right. What are you thinking about?
I'm just going to double down on what I was thinking about last week because I hope you took my advice and watched that USA Canada game on Saturday night where there were
1 second of it.
3 fights in the first 9 seconds. And then it was honestly like that first period was maybe the best period of hockey I've watched in quite some time.
Really?
And then the US won that game, and now they're playing again tonight for the Four Nations Face-Off Championship in Boston. I think it's at 8:00. And I actually think Canada might win. Not to sound unpatriotic, but I think it'll be pretty good. And I thought it was funny. Somebody said on Twitter, I saw a tweet that said like the NHL, which like strives to be apolitical at every turn, accidentally created the most politically charged sporting event in 45 years when the US and Canada played last Saturday in Montreal. But yeah, the final of that is tonight. So I would implore anyone to check it out if you don't have anything else going on.
You're gonna watch it? You're watching it?
I'll be watching it. Yes.
It is interesting the contrast that a lot of people drew between this happening in the NHL and like an NBA All-Star game that kind of missed.
Yeah, so I didn't watch a second of that. I missed like the entire NBA All-Star weekend, but I haven't really checked into that in a while. It's like they're not even worth comparing. I think like because the NHL All-Star game normal format is like 3-on-3 and whatever. It's the same thing as the NBA All-Star game. This is international hockey for guys who haven't done it in a decade. Like it was never going to be the same thing.
Yeah. So let me ask a question. Is this United States Canada game, they're playing for the second time now, it's for the championship, is it really about consequences or is it really about just familiarity, new hatred, rivalry? Like, is this a rivalry or is it because they're trying to win a trophy?
It's both. It's the political climate. It's rivalry. They're trying to win a trophy. But I also, as I said last week, like it's an opportunity for, I think, the United States hockey program to move past Canada.
Yeah. Okay.
Which would be a heck of a thing.
But I feel like there's like a lot of rivalry component here that is relatable to college football. That like a core element of what is making this USA Canada stuff great is like, what's the most similar thing in traditional American sport to what's happening with America Canada right now? It's like, I don't know, Auburn, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan. Like, what's the closest thing you get to that, right? Which is why I just don't think rivalries are
okay, because you don't get like part of civic pride or whatever, I guess.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. All right. So the last thing is, I wish America was better at public transportation. I wish there was like a train loop that we could take. I wish like it was just like easier for everybody to take buses everywhere. But I was on a bus for 38 hours to Florida, 18 down and 20 back. It is not easy when you're 51. Oh, mama. So it was great, but like I am theoretically pro bus travel, but after 38 hours, I am in real life not quite as pro bus travel because it was hard to sleep and my body was rejecting it.
So I've never done the overnight bus thing. Like the longest bus trip I did was like accidentally taking the local bus one time from State College to Philadelphia, which took like 7 hours. How often are you stopping to like get up and stretch your legs? Because I imagine you don't have much opportunity to do it while the bus is moving. Right?
No, there is not. And they said, don't use the bathroom unless it's an emergency. Basically, because then everybody would know you took a dump in the bus and it would smell bad. So it was all fine. But it felt like we stopped like every 2 or 2.5 hours, like for the bus driver regulations. So we stopped at like 3 o'clock in the morning when it felt like we're all asleep. Why are we stopping? And it's like, well, we've got to stop so the bus driver can stretch his legs. So that's why it took so long. It really is more like a 13 or 14 hour drive from Central Ohio to Orlando, Florida, but it took 18 or 20 because we stopped constantly. And we also did stop at the Buc-ee's in Daytona, 3 miles from the Daytona track on the day of the Daytona 500.
Ooh, that had to be a scene.
So there was just NASCAR fans all over the place. But I had never been to a Buc-ee's before, and we had brisket. So yeah, so I think I already mentioned that. But it was just like the bus is hard on old bones.
You and I have to go to Nashville next week, and you know what's on the way to Nashville from here in Columbus? There's a Buc-ee's.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
You're gonna get brisket?
Yeah, in Kentucky. There's one. Yeah. Actually, there's 2 in Kentucky, but we'll pass one. Yeah.
Okay. We'll do that. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us here on Kings of the North. Tuesday and Thursday, that's what we did this week. Next week, back to Monday and Wednesday. So that'll be the plan through much of the offseason until we get rolling more into spring football is twice a week. Normally that will be Monday and Wednesday. If we have to adjust because of work or life or other things, we will adjust. But we appreciate you guys finding us wherever we are. That's on YouTube. That's on your favorite podcast platform. And we, of course, are always grateful for just letting us be part of your college football experience. Thanks, as always, to our producer, Mike Yorstowski, for making us look good and sound good. We will see you guys next Monday. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. And that was Kings of the North.